Are you trying hard to disrupt the market with innovative solutions? Want to make your company more agile? Keep the competitive edge by innovating with startups and like startups. Get to know the importance of connection between corporations and startups, how they differ, how they complement, and how the best things happen when they work together. Prepare yourself for one great panel discussion. Sharpen your senses. It's gonna make you stronger. We are bringing corporate innovation to the new level.
Yeah, hello. Vienna is back, and we're gonna have our next panel. And the next panel is on corporate innovation, and it's an honor for us, for the Brutkasten, as a leading startup and media platform, to host as well this panel on corporate innovation. There are gonna be really interesting experts talking about like the success and how corporate innovation also can succeed with startups, and what challenges you have to face here. And I also want to hand over to the moderator, Antonia, then.
Hello, thank you very much. Hi from Vienna as well. Welcome to our panel discussion on corporate venturing, how corporates and startups can successfully collaborate. My name is Antonia Matjacic. I'm a consultant at WhatAVenture, an innovation agency here in Vienna. And together with me today are really good speakers that I would like to just quickly introduce and then hand over to them. We have here Shimrit Samuel, corporate consultant from Israel. Alexandre Massart from Blend Ventures, UK. Jenő Nieder from PorfoLion Capital Partners, Hungary. Demetris, Skourides, Oracle, UAE. And Luis Huber from WhatAVenture, Austria. Hi, hello, how are you doing?
Hi, great. Thanks for asking.
Doing great.
Okay, great. Then maybe I would like to hand over the word to you to quickly introduce yourself. And ideally, ladies first, to start with Shimrit Samuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonia. So it's a real pleasure to be here with everyone today. My name is Shimrit Samuel. I'm currently based in Israel. I work with corporates and startups, and my passion is to help startups evolve. I'm a big believer in the synergies that lay between corporates and startups, and the different forms where we can unleash that kind of synergy. So in the past, I've been working in corporates, promoting business development and innovation initiatives. I was an investor in a VC, sitting in boards and helping startups from that perspective. And I'm also currently working with startups. So I try to see the holistic view, and I hope that I can contribute for today's topic.
Thank you, Shimrit. Demetris, you want maybe to go further?
Sure, of course. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation and opportunity to be here, Antonia. My name is Demetris Skourides, and I work for Oracle Alliances and Channels. I head the cloud transformation team across EMEA and Asia Pacific. I'm predominantly focused on helping and working with partners to embrace innovation, transform, undertake the difficult task of transforming and building new solutions that basically go out to our customers. And as part of that, we have an experience in working with thousands of partners and new companies that are around the block trying to develop something new and excite new customers. Once again, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Alexandre?
Hi, yes, so my name is Alexandre Massart. I'm
in my previous life, I was working for Visa Inc. in San Francisco, and I was running their mobile payment investments. So I was doing a lot with corporate venturing, and that's actually how I learned also what corporate venturing means, or what like strategic investments means, and what advantages and disadvantages these have. I'm a huge believer as well, like Shimrit, with corporate venturing, and I think by having an optimal mix of all the stakeholders, you can achieve great results.
Thank you. Jenő?
Hi everyone, my name is Jenő Nieder. I'm partner at PorfoLion Capital Partners. PorfoLion Capital Partners is the VC arm of OTP Bank, one of the largest banking group in Europe. PorfoLion was established 10 years ago. We are based in Budapest. We manage 5 funds. We have 23 portfolio companies, and we have an asset under management around 140 million euros. We focus on the CE region, have acquired companies in Poland, Czech Republic, and Romania, and we have already made acquisitions in the US through one of our portfolio companies. And we usually invest in startup and scale-up stories.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Luis?
So also thanks for being here. I work at WhatAVenture, and my work focuses on the corporate venturing arm, meaning that we support corporations in investing into startups, whether it's in a CVC model or just in a business unit model. And we invest in startups ourselves as well. And now I have 3 startups or projects currently running. Yeah, happy to be here. Looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much to all of you for the introduction. Very impressive insights. And with the keyword of investing in startups, I would start with basically my first questions. Would be, there is a lot of talk of corporations that are investing in startups as a must. So corporations need to do that in order to succeed. Can you maybe elaborate, where does value creation opportunities emerge from corporates investing in startups, and especially on corporate side? Alexandre, would you maybe start, and the others feel free to jump in.
Okay, so in my days back then, the advantage of this, as I said before, you really have both sides of the thing. So I often seen like startups being worried when you have large corporates investing, because they don't want to be seen as one of their in like part of that already. As for the corporates, if you do like strategic investments, in my view, you are buying yourself almost like an insurance into a company or into new technology that may become at some point like strategically relevant for you. So I think any corporate, to answer your question, I think any corporate who understands that now the innovation is going so fast forward and wants to somehow say, okay, I need to be involved, should get start investing in companies in order to achieve the strategic like visions. I hope that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Shimrit, Jenő, any thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, if I may jump in, I think the combination of the financial attractiveness and strategic relevance is what should make the startup most appealing. So and then on the third hand, also, when you talk about insurance, I also think that it's a good vehicle to attract talent. So normally when you look at investing into startups and you have like a downward protection in a patent, this can also be the team for corporate. So investing into entrepreneurs and showing them the way of how this corporate can also work, maybe is a protection as well to gain talent at some point.
Definitely added to this, I think the most important thing for a corporate to understand, I mean for the big corporate to understand, that the CVC is actually not a vehicle to implement his digital strategy. It's a really good thing to have access to talents, technological stacks, new developments, innovations, even on its non-core field, but it's definitely not the implementation of its digital strategy. And that's the difference what Alexandre just make very clearly, that it's a combination, but this sort of independence should be highly emphasized on the corporate and on the startup scene as well.
Perhaps I can add also an objective perspective, because when you look at tiny Israel, there are more than 530 corporates based here, and you can name them. It's US based and Asians and of course Europeans to a great extent. And I can name few, but you can see that there is such a variety and mixture of incentives to why they do things. And we can take recent times. I think the Corona days were kind of a lot of investors were sitting on a fence, a lot of CVCs. But take Intel, for example, they just acquired Habana for $2 billion. And just a couple of years ago, they acquired Mobileye for over $18 billion. And when you think of those amounts, it was a strategic move for them in a different view, because they just also acquired Movies, if you heard about it, for over $500 million. So Movies together with Mobileye are a message to the world that they're taking automotive and automation, everything in general, very seriously. However, same company, Intel, in the past, acquired companies for more than few $1 billion, and those companies completely were eliminated. So that in reference to what Alexandre shared with us, that it could be also an insurance, it can also be a double-edged sword and can also be the death of a startup. So I think it's always important for the startup itself to think, on the one hand, it could be a potential collaboration and market penetration. On the other hand, it can also be coloring yourself with the brand name of the becoming a vehicle for that corporate. And sometimes it can really succeed at large extent, and sometimes it can really, really fail for a startup perspective. So it's very interesting to see it from that view. And I'll just add maybe another point for further thinking. It's also interesting to see how the VCs, previously as a VC myself, how we look at the CVCs. It's on one hand a confirmation for our due diligence. We want to understand that the market is actually ready for what the venture is trying to sell. On the other hand, it can also be a sign for maybe a danger zone, because when the market is consolidated, if you don't sell then to Intel or to Second, then there is no existence for the startup. So I find this topic fascinating.
Thank you very much, Shimrit, for your thoughts. Maybe jumping then one step even before starting the investments into the startup, when would be the right timing for a corporate that is just right now thinking about corporate venturing to start, in terms of what does a company need? What are some prerequisites for starting a so to say, CVC?
So maybe I can give my 2 cents. This is a wonderful question, Antonia. Thank you. I actually think that an investment is not the first step a corporate can make. I see it as it's insurance when there is a competing corporate that may go for the same technology that exists out there. But if possible for a corporate to make a move in collaborating with a startup, understanding by walking and not just by talking and promising, because the diligence only the drill down goes to some extent. You don't really know what you buy until it's yours. If there is a possibility for collaboration, I think that's a much healthier and with milestone kind of process. Not always, however, that is possible, because some ventures outside, when you know that you can't initiate with the same technological initiative in-house, you want to market, you want to own it partially to block your competition before they're stepping in. So sometimes you just can't help it. But to your question, there are many forms of collaborations, and I urge corporates always to overcome the non-invented here, that there is much to go around, and it doesn't matter, it's mostly a cultural thing, and to foster as many different collaboration in different colors, in different capacities with startups. That way they will come, they'll have a wider view of what's out there.
Actually, to the last point that Shimrit just said, one thing that a lot of corporates underestimate is the knowledge in that one specific field CEOs bring to the table in a startup. So let's say there is something new bubbling up in innovation space. The CEO of the corporate, he gets all the bottom-up information, which is great. But however, now imagine if you call one of the CEOs of a corporate you invested in that is helping you, and you call him and say, look, I need to know what's going on in this field. He's going to give you a completely different perspective, and the perspective you receive bottom up. And he will know everything and anything about the competitors, because that is what he needs to know in order to survive. He will know a lot about products and everything. So I think that's an additional point to what she just said before, Shimrit, that a lot of corporates or also top management underestimate.
Besides that, I think the key challenge for a corporate, as you mentioned, as you asked, what's the prerequisite actually to have a CVC, is whether the corporate itself is ready and able to understand and accept a completely different risk profile of the investments. These are completely different what they are used to, and in case the corporate is able to accept only those circles what they are usually running, with investment banks and M&A teams and everything like that, then their corporate venture capital fund will just actually fail, because this is a completely new arena. We are, and they are competing with each other, with VCs and CVCs as well. And I think this sort of change in mindset is really needed to establish a good and fine working corporate venture capital fund.
This brings me to my next question in terms of a structure. So we saw that CVC can operate either as a separate entity or as an integrated business unit. So some might say that the corporate venture capital, so funds as a separate entity, are growing, but the investments off balance sheets are maybe going even through the roof. So please challenge me on that. But what differences or pros and cons do you see on the different structures, how to set up a CVC?
I think there's a lot of factors coming in there. So when I was doing corporate venturing, I was doing it off balance sheet. And that's a way to have a better control over what's going on. However, in my view, if you really want to foster investments and be also successful, not just on a quantitative ROIs, not just on quantitative ROIs, but also on the qualitative ROIs. You may want to do a mixture in between, because in one you have just only investments that are maybe also not strategically aligned, whereas on the balance sheet you often have only strategic alignment, which also has also challenges. So in my view, it's like something in between I would look at, and there are examples out there.
Alexandre, I couldn't agree more with you, and maybe I will give a different view, not maybe in between, maybe both. Take Samsung, for example, in Israel. They have 3 different arms for investments. One of them is completely off the balance sheet, and you can derive from that which kind of investment and how fast they're doing things. So on one hand, I sat in a board of a company that we sold to Samsung, and it was Samsung LSI, so it was directly from a business unit. It was very complex because Samsung is a very interesting company. But it was very fascinating to see that on the board itself, sat together with me, someone that represented the corporate arm. And they're also another independent venture arm for Samsung, and they're much more agile and running fast and with more degrees of freedom. And there are pros and cons to both, on their agility on the one hand, and accuracy with strategic initiatives on the other hand, for the ones that are that have the strategic view. So it's really, really, really interesting to, I mean, you could take also Israel as a little puddle where everything happens. So I couldn't agree more.
The important thing is here, I think, that we need to, I mean, the startup needs to actually avoid the deadly hug of the corporate, even in that and the other side as well. So it's not important only at the exit situations, but during the whole investment period, that this hug is actually a deadly hug, or we are, and the CVCs helping the company to go through those life cycle parts which they haven't experienced before. I think that's key point.
Mm-hmm. Maybe connecting to something that Alexandre just said before, it's important to set up, so to say, qualitative and quantitative KPIs to measure success. So basically, many corporate venturing activities are not solely based on financial goals, but have a strategic character, as we heard before for many times. So how can corporates measure quantitative and qualitative KPIs other than measuring financial return on investment? What approaches are there on the market?
So I think when coming to choosing a framework for corporate venture capital arm, this must be different frameworks than, for example, VCs take, just because they're purely financially driven. So something that we kind of used was the OKR framework that was aligned with the 2030, 2050 strategic goals that the corporate had in general. And OKR is using qualitative goals, like objectives and key results, to break them down in quantitative mini goals and steps that you have to achieve. Because as Alexandre said, the insurance, and if you bought the right insurance for your industry, and if it's the disruptive technology that saves you later in 10 years, you will know this only in 10 years or later. But there must be steps to evaluate your strategic fit, and if you do something right, also from strategic standard, the KPIs are easier to measure than the strategic KPIs.
Thank you, Luis.
It is, I think it is one of the hardest questions, and you hear it all the time, that question. We tried back then, so I have to admit right now I'm not up to date to the latest how you would do the quantitative, but back then what we did, we tried to visualize quantitative like KPIs, where we had like 7, ranging from innovation leadership to technology, implementation, risk mitigation, etc. So there were like lots of different like measure points, and we had a radar chart where we, at the beginning of a relationship with a company, we like figured out where we were, and then every 3 months or every 6 months we showed to the management where we think they are now, and alone the visualizing effect helped a lot the management to understand what are the other ROIs next to the like quantitative ones.
I'll just add maybe to that we need to remind ourselves there is a difference between investments and acquisition. And an investment may lead to an acquisition, but it also may not. And therefore, the qualitative and quantitative outcomes will change. So Core Photonics, for example, is really just an example for a company where the same arm that invested and sat as observer in the board also ended up acquiring the company. So it was very, in that sense, positive, but also investments allow you other things. It's allow you veto rights. So sometimes you can block move of a competitor, and that has a qualitative or maybe quantitative value. But it's always clear that there is a difference, and we need to put mind in that too. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily it would lead to an acquisition, and not necessarily an acquisition would bring to fruition the synergistic value, the unleashed synergistic value.
So as we heard at the beginning, there are many good reasons to invest in startups, obviously. However, to achieve the goals that are set, corporates need to have strategic approaches when it comes to defining their investment focus in terms of search fields and startup stages, etc. What should corporates consider when choosing their investment focus?
From our perspective, I think the best if we are investing in startups and scale-ups simply due to the fact that we believe that in on this part of the life cycle we can achieve those technological edges, and we can get access to those talents which actually worth to invest in. That's our mission.
So, Luis, you recently, so to say, got in depth with this topic for clients that established a CVC fund. What are your thoughts on how to set the focus?
So the biggest discussion was whether to discuss in scale-ups, where you have a quicker amortization and financially a revenue, or to invest in seed startups, let's say, or on the earlier stages, where the value for the companies or from the companies is even bigger to the startups because they have the industry knowledge, the first pilot customers, and maybe have a bigger input on the strategic and product development side than only on the financial side. So this is something that you have to, of course, think about. But then when you invest into industries that are not your core knowledge, let's say you're a telecommunication corporate and you invest into e-health startups, you don't have the knowledge to help an e-health startup in the seed stage, maybe to really enhance the product development. Maybe you have it, maybe also later in the Series A, your value is solely financially, but you have to consider where is the value that I bring to the startup, what value brings the startup to me.
Picking up the word value, what value brings the startup to me as a corporate? So there are various, so to say, possibilities how corporates can evaluate which vehicle or approach to choose when investing in startups, and what is the value of the startup for the corporate. What are the approaches here?
So
go ahead, Luis.
Oh, thanks. So I'm a big fan of watching the team. The team is the core of the startup. The earlier it is, the less KPIs you have that you can really base your investment hypothesis on. So choosing the right team, the right partners, and really investing to the team and their beliefs, their vision, and their motivation.
Adding on top of what Luis has just shared from a corporate perspective, right? We encourage basically the innovation from a synergistic approach. So I love the ideas shared earlier on by Alexandre and also Jenő about both the independence, right? And also helping the startups go to market. So what we are very keen on doing is supporting the startups, right? irrespective of the industry they are, by providing them a range of resources, which may include access to technology, product management, people who basically work and know the latest and the greatest of the technology, mentors, and last but not least, right, the support vehicles that they need to actually go into the market, be it, you know, opportunities to showcase in events, industries, you know, local hubs, or potentially sometimes even, let's say, introducing the startup to common customers that we could actually have a synergy with. And we do have a program for that, which we actually advocate across the world.
I can maybe give also another example that looks first negative, but actually it's very positive to startups. So what we had, I faced that situation actually a couple of times, that we, so back then at Visa, we were always merchant agnostic. So supplier agnostic. So whoever we wanted to work with. So it didn't mean if we invested in a startup that the unit who wants to use them, that they have to work with them. They can also work with a competitor. And I had probably 2 times that they were all pitching for an RFP. I helped them, etc., etc. And then it was a competitor who won. So that's not very fun when you have to explain to the startup afterwards, look, I'm sorry, although we invested in you, but you haven't been chosen. However, the good side of this, and that is a value to the startup, you really could go through the whole product and why they chose the other competitor. You could really give them insights, and they were either able afterwards to improve the product in order to win other RFPs afterwards, or they may have said, oh, look, this is outside of our scope. We're actually happy that we didn't get this. So that's also value creation that looks on the beginning and is not fun for the fund manager to go over to the startup and say, look, I'm sorry, you haven't been chosen. But that's a lot of value. I see it in that way.
Mm-hmm. In many cases, we can provide, or all the CVCs can provide them with sandboxes, you know, pilot projects. And actually, especially in the startup, I mean, in the seed phase, we are actually ready and able to provide them with the opportunity to learn how to make a good B2B sales. In many cases, they are lacking this knowledge. They are lacking the people who are understanding this. And with this experience, with the helping hand of the corporate, they are able to learn from these situations, and these experiences are really, really good for them. Besides, I think when a company is choosing its partner, it needs to choose on the basis that, let's say if OTP Bank is behind them, it's a big corporate, you know, well recognized, and it's really good for them from employer branding point of view. What we are hearing, that employees are choosing companies which are, of course, financially stable. They really like startups, and besides have a really good name. And with CVCs, startups can boost up their recognition, their trust, and they can get better employees. And besides, they can show to the market, I mean potential clients as well, that there is a big corporate who trusted in them and who are ready to provide them with financial stability and trust as well.
Mm-hmm. Maybe on top of that, so the quality of deal sourcing is key to success for VC, CVCs, and whether it is focused on financial or strategic returns, volume and quality are 2 important factors, so to say. So how can CVCs source best opportunities for investment?
Well, that's a wonderful question. Maybe I can give again Israel as a test bed, just because I know it well. I'm half European, half Israeli. So, well, it is a tiny country, and we have more than 4,000 startups as we speak currently. But there is a lot of noise. There is a lot of long tail, of course. Not every startup is a tech startup. Not every startup crushes the competitors in the lab. There are many forms to support, and it goes really on top of the last question. In what I see here, that various CVCs are taking various approaches to, let's take Intel again as an example, and I'm not an Intel employee, but I was a co-founder for the Intel for Startups. We just recently launched, first time ever for Intel, was before the acquisitions of Habana and Movik. Intel came to the understanding that they want founders to wake up in the morning and think about how do I collaborate with Intel, and that wasn't maybe the current situation. So they wanted to create a good coupling with a brand name for them to be a company that is known as helpful for startups, even if it's not an investment or an acquisition. So that was the vehicle of Intel for Startups. It takes nothing from the startups. It also gives them, you need to apply and be accepted, and it's only 10 startups, and they're very, very tech oriented. But you get, like Demetris mentioned, you get such expertise in such wide area that a company like Intel and many other companies, it's just Intel as an example, they have the stack of cloud, they have the stack of compute, obviously security, it's all horizontal layers that are critical for a startup no matter what it does. And you have blind spots as an investor and mostly as an innovator, you constantly have blind spots. If you have good friends, and which the corporates can be, they help you to eliminate few of those blind spots. So I think that is one example. On another example, Microsoft launched a competition for AI applications together with a VC in Israel. And they just said, you know, no strings attached. You don't have to take equity from us, from M12, but we're going to give 100K to the winner. And there are criteria, etc. But they comprise with an idea that it doesn't make you obliged to accept them as a partner, but you can actually reach out and collaborate with them and accept the grant 100K reward. So I see it, I'm constantly amazed from creativity. And there are many other forms to still yet go, and maybe there are more ideas here.
Yeah, and adding on top of what Shimrit said, which is a fantastic opportunity, I think most of the time, right, we often undermine the importance of the strategic relationship or the strategic collaboration. And for most of the new companies out there, the startups who are really trying to change the whole environment by pivoting to experience economies or outcome-based economies, right? There's fundamental things that there's blind spots out there for them, and the corporations, be it us as Oracle with our cloud startup accelerator or others, have a lot of industry experience, but we don't know everything, right? So that relationship with a corporation allows you to actually, first of all, perhaps test the business model, perhaps think about the business model of, in a better perspective. And from the scale-up perspective is, how do you actually find a model where you can use some of the cloud technology that exists, but at the same time not compromise the growth of your business model of the startup in the future versus something that will eventually be scaling up in cost. So that's a very important thing, because being able to really identify the business model that will make you successful is one thing. Being able to contain the scalability of the operation in the future as you evolve from a few thousands of users into millions, right, is a completely different thing. And like you said, Shimrit, we also have the Startup Accelerator, which basically doesn't offer that investment. It actually offers a strategic cooperation, alignment, mentorship opportunity, and a vehicle to actually potentially even reach our some 430,000 customers across the world.
And Demetris, if I'm not mistaken, you also applied some really good outcome investment and acquisitions for Oracle in Israel. And I can name a few, but I'm sure you can name them better.
Sure. I'm not wanting to talk too much about the investment. I'll just talk about the strategic cooperation there. But yeah.
Yeah, I
We're
think
very fond of supporting the ecosystem.
Oh,
go ahead.
To add to this, I think the strategic relationship is really the key, and it's how much you work closely together with the units within the corporate. So if you know what the strategic move is, what they want to do or work, it's for you much easier than to get clear criteria. What are you looking for? They usually also, so our best investments back then at Visa, when I was there, always came in internally, because they came up and I said, okay, we're trying to solve that problem. We're looking for startups. We have one in our view. Can you check on them? So we checked on them, and then we always had also a competitor landscape, which exactly filled often also these blind spots where they were saying, oh my God, this is something there. Okay, I didn't see that. And they used to come in, and we had a chat with them where the unit specifically was looking for that opportunity or for that help, was also there, and also probed them with the questions. So if you're talking about sourcing the best investments, I think the best are coming really the closer you work internally to find the right investment. Maybe one last point to this, I was in another company where I saw that as well, was what is very, very important too, is that you do allow the internal strategic units in their objectives, in their performance objectives of the management or the middle management, that they have to be innovative as well, because it's super hard sometimes to get their time, because they say, look, this is not in my objective, I'm doing something else. No, you have to do that. You have to look at the company. You have to help us is to do the right investments.
Maybe connected to that, what we understood by now, it's not only about having the right structure, focus, and the budget to build up a CVC, but as well to have the best team internally. So how do I build a winning team for a CVC fund?
I think we are facing with the exact same situation that startups and scale up are facing, that how can we recruit and keep the good people in our business. Actually, what have worked for us is actually a partnership in which we are working in a classic VC form. There are a GP, there are an LP, which is of course the big corporate. But still, this partnership type seems to be a good solution for that.
So we talk to a lot of corporates, and we emphasize on having a carry for the CVC units as well. A carry is very common in VCs, of course, and it's an incentive to attract talent. Like a startup has the employer share option pool, and they still kind of struggle to implement carries, because when you have strategic goals, that is not purely financially. How do you track the carry, and what is the outcome afterwards? So those incentives to attract talent are, from our standpoint, also important as well.
Luis, with the carry, did you have a full carry there? Or did you have seen this in an example where they capped the carry? So they did allow the carry to attract the right talent. However, it was capped because they said, well, suddenly if you have a huge exit, it would look bad if these employees suddenly get these massive bonuses or carries.
Yes, exactly. So we kept the carry, but added KPIs with bonuses also on a strategic level. So if, as you call it, an insurance really pans out to be insurance, there's an extra bonus for those strategic investments as well.
There is, I believe, an intrinsic conflict, a really strong one, because if you make an investment thinking about the corporate itself acquiring the company, then on which side do you take? If you have your partner in a VC and you have carry, then you want the acquisition to be 2 billion, 18 billion. But if you are the corporate itself, you want to buy good stuff for less. So there is an intrinsic, but as a corporate VC, you are the one who sits on the board. So would you veto the 2 billion acquisition because you want it to be 3 billion? It's really, really tricky. So I think if I were to structure a new fund, they must find a way where there is alignment of incentives, because as a corporate, first and foremost, you want to invest in startups. If you decide that it is for a strategic reason, you would want to come, what I believe, to fruition by acquiring the startups and integrating the technology within. And therefore, you can't create a conflict where the leaders of the investments are incentivized by a high price with acquisition. So I think a corporate needs to decide the way Alexandre defined it before. If it's strategic, then it can't really incentivize by carry. Wherever it's a situation where it's an independent fund that also serves a strategic momentum, but not necessarily, it also brings the ROI, then you can incentivize because you want the fund to make a lot of profit.
Getting back to your question 20 minutes earlier, which was really clear whether we are discussing investments or we are discussing acquisitions. Actually, when we are talking about investments, I think the carry is a really good thing and a good motivation tool. If we are talking about acquisitions, it should be some sort of closed-end structure. Otherwise, it cannot be implemented in that way. And for the investments, an independent decision making is needed, because then you are just actually running the usual investment risk and the usual exit risk, and that's how you can build up a good carry system.
Maybe talking a bit about trends and specifically deep tech. So where do you see some catch up to do from corporates with deep tech, meaning in terms of that research and science are drifting from corporate innovation interests because of slowness of research projects, and the industry needs to see quicker and faster results. So how does deep tech and corporate fit together? Alexandre, maybe you want to elaborate on that.
I have that question actually afterwards in a deep tech panel. Okay. I think that was already said earlier. I don't remember. I think it was Luis who said that. Where it's really where does CVC wants to be more active? That he wants to be more active on early stage. That means working with R&D or even proof of concept, having a spin out of that, and then using that industry wide new innovation. Or does the CVC want to position itself more later stage? If they decide for the first one, I would recommend them to start very early by helping to validate proof of concepts, by helping to also test them out. Somebody said before, sandbox system, that makes a lot of sense, where they offer possibilities is to do this testing of these early MVPs after the POC, and then to really start helping them up. So to answer your question, if they want to get involved with deep tech, which I think is a great thing, then they should really start very early.
I think from my humble perspective, all great acquisitions are involved with deep tech and take acquisitions that did not happen in Israel. Facebook acquiring WhatsApp, etc. I think it is, maybe I can rationalize it, because when a corporate is already established, it usually does not acquire a startup for the branding. It acquires a startup usually for its unique proprietary technology. Otherwise, the corporate itself would invented it in-house and made it more profitable for itself. So take any big investment that happened in recent years, and maybe my distinct colleagues can give examples of investment that were not in deep technology, or the acquisition were for technology, maybe market expansion, maybe geographical expansion. But I think the majority of great investments and big acquisitions, especially for the ones that we, maybe Oracle and Intel and Samsung, the technical corporates. I think their move for investing and acquiring is due to the technology. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Maybe to wrap it up here at the end, one last question might not be the easiest, but so can you share maybe what are your thoughts, or what is your definition of CVC or VC 2.0, and what do you hope to see or not to see in CVC VC 3.0?
I would just say one word, if I may, inclusion of everyone. Everyone that is not now seen, and not because of gender by reality. My gender is I'm a female. Not because of that. I think inclusion would promote for better, just first of all better society, but also for just better everything. We'll understand better technologies. So I think mixture of CVCs taking people from professionals from different countries, that's one sort of inclusion, and gender and ethnicity and all sort. I think first we need to be good people, and then to be good investors and good to our employers and etc.
I couldn't agree more with Shimrit. Inclusion and also being open to working together. If it's huge disruption, it doesn't help if just one company is doing this. But if you want to build, for instance, a new standard or something like that, you need also collaboration. You mentioned that right on the beginning. So inclusion and collaboration.
I think those are some really nice words to end today's panel on corporate venturing. So thank you very much to all of you that have been participating today here. I think we got a lot of learnings on how to set up a CVC, what's the right timing, what are the key success factors, what are the key challenges or questions that are so to say, to around us regarding CVCs. So once again, thank you very much for that. And for our audience, feel free to reach out to our speakers, panelists, to connect with them on social media if you have any questions. Don't miss this opportunity. Thank you and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonia.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Antonia, for moderating this really interesting panel with all the insights and learnings we have heard right now. And I want to hand over to Maribor into the studio right now.